Battlefield has a quality control problem. At this point, there's no doubt about that, and it's damaging the reputation of the franchise, DICE and EA. It's hurting the core player base, and new players who are trying to play the game are having a rough introduction to it and not logging back in. This is not a good look, and as a fan of this brilliant series who wants it to grow, I'm really sad to see this happening, and I think that something has to change, because there is obviously a big issue here that won't be solved by itself. What I'm talking about is how each and every update, every patch seems to break something within the game, and often in a very frustrating way. Or worse than that, some features or game modes just don't work at all, or content is put within the patches that isn't even meant to be included yet. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that something breaks with every patch. It's become a meme now, and that's not good. Last patch there was this really annoying sound bug where you could hear a plane really loud above you overhead even if a plane wasn't there. The end of round music would play throughout the entire round sometimes. And with the latest patch, well, it's introduced a whole host of new problems, players sometimes going invisible if they wear certain cosmetics. As well as that, another one, there's a recent ADS bug where when you aim down the sights, your gun isn't actually visible, but you're still zooming in, so you can't aim. Kind of breaks everything. When Al Sundan, the new map, released last Thursday with two smaller game modes, TDM and Squad Conquest, there was a bug whereby players couldn't spawn in on the map. And let's not forget that the large Conquest version of Al Sundan is not even in the game yet when it was supposed to be, because a stability issue was found with one of the platforms. Now they fixed that apparently, but then another bug appeared and now it's looking like it's going to release in mid-July. And that's just completely taken the wind out of the sails of all the hype. Al Sundan is a big classic Battlefield Conquest map, and then it comes out but you can only play TDM and a very small version of Conquest on it. As a player, it's a big disappointment. And remember the new Firestorm update? Well, that's in the game now, but it was meant to launch last Tuesday with the brand new Dome area. I was really excited to go and check it out. Well, matchmaking was taken offline because there was a major problem with it, meaning that most players couldn't play at all until the next day. And going back to Al Sundan for a second, I want to say that I think if DICE find issues with content, that it's absolutely the right call to hold it back rather than release it in an even more broken state. And I don't think anyone would really disagree with that. The problem is that when this happens so often, players start to lose confidence and they become more frustrated than understanding. Also, those are just a handful of the bugs that I've experienced. There are huge issues in the game right now, some that have just been in there since launch. Stuff like planes, dusting of explosives, landing shots that simply don't register, netcode problems, and there's also been reports of the machine guns on the planes simply not working. There have even been documented cases of big input lag with the mouse movement on PC, which just makes the game unplayable for some. And all of that coupled with one of the biggest problems across the board in the game right now, I'd say, is performance. And I can't stress enough how varied and unpredictable this is for certain people. Some people say the game is fine for them, others are having huge issues with it stuttering. I have to admit that I've had some bad stuttering in the game myself, and recently it seems to be worse than usual. The recent patch apparently improved it for some, whereas others have reported that it's just got worse. Somehow there is a big underlying performance issue in the game, and people running different setups with DX11 or DX12, different versions of Windows or whatever it might be, are all having vastly different experiences. So I imagine that it's a hard problem to pin down, but it's there, and it's been there since launch. Now, what does seem to be consistent though is assignments or assignment tracking might have something to do with this. Disabling all of your assignments does help for the most part, but when you're doing Tides of War assignments to get XP and they finish tracking a node, there's often a big stutter in your game, which suggests that there's definitely a problem with that side of things. And this is no small issue. Some players are really struggling to play the game because of the performance. It just doesn't feel nice. So this needs to be a priority. And then we've got patch content. It's been long known that every time a patch is released, there are people who dive into the files and data mine, and they use File Explorer and they find any sort of crumbs detailing future content. And this could be maps, weapons, skins, references to game modes, you name it. Recently, someone discovered 30 new weapons in the game files, and some of these weapons look finished, but others are clearly not ready for the game and are missing animations and final polish, even skins. The question is, why are they in the game files at all if they're not ready for release, and why aren't they more encrypted? I can't really answer that one because I don't work at DICE and I don't have any in-depth knowledge of their procedures, but it does seem strange to me to have that many future weapons and content in the game before they're available. As I mentioned though, just because it's in the files doesn't mean that it's playable right now, and it could be old content too, and I know some people would very much like them to be all available instantly, but they could be missing game logic, animations, damage values and all sorts before they're actually good for public consumption. And I understand that certain developers have specific workflows and stuff just gets left in a patch, a certain update, and it goes out, but I just feel like this is kind of strange. And I imagine the main issue that players have with this is that they don't understand why DICE doesn't detail these things well in advance if they know all of the future content coming to the game. I'd imagine that they'd rather detail them at their own pace though, to be honest. And this content being in the game though is just cracking the surface. With the recent patch, a ton of new epic vehicle cosmetics were made available for purchase with company coin. Okay, well that's a nice surprise, some people might say, and they spent some of their company coin. But this was a two-pronged problem. First of all, they weren't meant to be added into the game yet, which was one issue. And secondly, like I said, they were epic skins, which meant that they were supposed to be only purchasable with the Battlefield currency. And yet, these were available for company coin. And that's not a great look. Now since then I think these have been removed and they're not available to purchase anymore. I'm sure we'll see them come back at some point though, but I have to say that this problem was hotfixed very fast. And that could have been because it was just an easy problem to solve, right? But how does this look to certain players of the game? Well, to some people it might seem like, oh, they've slipped up. I can buy something with company coin that I'm supposed to be only available to buy with real money. DICE see this, it's a money thing, they instantly fix it. Whereas you've got this plethora of other problems in the game that don't involve money, and it feels like those problems have been going on for months and months. Something else as well, and it's not massively important. Do you remember a couple of days ago I released that video of the Stairway to Heaven Easter egg? That wasn't meant to be in the game at that point. It was unfinished. There was no end to it yet. If you've watched that video, some pressure plates were found on the test range, and when 4 players stand on them, you were able to build stairs into the sky. So you and 3 friends could try and build those stairs as high as you wanted to, but you had to be fast because they'd crumble behind you, and V1s try and take you out the higher up you get. There's a little height counter and a timer. It was actually a lot of fun. Well, the day after that, me and some friends spent about 8 hours trying to get to the end of this, it was revealed that that particular Easter egg was not actually meant to be in the game yet because it wasn't finished, and as such will be temporarily unavailable. Now this may seem like a small thing, an Easter egg isn't important, not that many people are going to attempt it. We still had fun and I'm not complaining, but the problem is the principle of it. Why is that content showing up and appearing and available to use and play with in the game when it should not be there? And at that point you have to simply question, this is happening for the base game all the time. How is this happening? Something isn't working here. Now I don't expect that we will ever get a proper understanding of how the procedures at DICE work, but maybe if we did, it could shine some light on how this occurs. It has to be said that it's not been the smoothest of months for the game. June has been bad for BF5. Imagine if you're a player that's picking up BF5 for the first time, because you could do now because they've just put it in Origin Access and EA Access, and you jump into the game, it stutters like crazy, you see invisible players and there are constant plane sounds overhead. You're probably never going to come back to the game again. And I know that seems quite dramatic, but as veteran players we know that while we love the franchise, we're now experiencing these problems more and more every single patch, and it starts to wear on you. There is 100% a quality control problem here, and it needs to be addressed soon. Whether that's the way that content is produced and added to the game, whether it's QA testing or how the game's being tested, I don't have the answer, but this has to be solved. Now I will always play Battlefield because I love the franchise, and I do think BF5 is a great game, but every now and again it becomes a chore because there are so many problems with it. I still play it all the time and I'm still going to play it going forward, but there are certain people I know, friends that I used to play BF 1942 and BF2 with back in the day, and they're just way less invested in the franchise now, and they've moved away and started to play other things because the quality of the product has diminished, and every time there's a new patch they just expect there to be bugs, and they're right. The thing is, I know that the developers at DICE don't want the game to be like this, and they work very hard on the game, and they know themselves the issues that the game faces. I've been super lucky enough to go to the studio and play games early, give feedback, meet these people, and they probably hate to see people reacting like this, but it's the reality of it. But another reality is that this just is not a good look for the company of DICE, for the Battlefield franchise. It's a AAA developer with massive budgets, handling one of the biggest FPS franchises around right now. Hell, one of the biggest franchises in video game history. But it isn't acting like one. It just doesn't come across that way sometimes. And it feels like other franchises, other shooters, multiplayer titles don't have to deal with this level of bugs and frustration at times. And the fact is that ultimately we are consumers and we've paid money for this product. And we shouldn't throw the blame at anyone in particular or attack people. That's not the way forward. But what we do need to do is keep highlighting these problems. Communication and reasonable conversations are a good place to start. Because like I said, I know DICE will want to fix this, but if things don't change and it stays this way, some of the core audience are just going to leave. Now, I have said this recently, but the next 6 months is going to be a huge time for not just BF5, but the franchise as a whole. There is only so much that players are going to take before they lose trust, and once it's lost, it's incredibly hard to get that back. And it just feels that Battlefield patches are a meme now. What's it broke? Sort of thing. 2 steps forward, 10 steps back. And when you're at that point, then something has definitely gone wrong. DICE are a great studio, and I'm hoping that they can get on top of this and ensure that the content flow is really addressed going forward, because I want the game and the franchise to succeed. And for me, it's still the most fun I have in multiplayer shooters, even with how broken it is sometimes. But the reputation of DICE and Battlefield is teetering on a knife edge right now, so I'm hoping that they can pull their socks back up and get back at it again. And that's all for today, folks. Do let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. As an outsider, how do you think this problem can be solved? Let me hear what you have to say. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you didn't, a dislike. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.